KUAM News Hotspot is brought to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
In an unusual public appeal ahead of the actual budget hearing, the University of Guam is calling on the legislature to pass its full $42 million funding request for next fiscal year. School President Dr. Thomas Christ says it's to allow the school to stabilize and recover from past funding shortfalls. UOG has experienced a continued decrease for its operations since 2018. Specifically, over the last 5 years, it's seen a 23% drop, and adjusted for inflation, the decrease is closer to 35%. President Christ says the funding is critical to the institution's success and to its continuing accreditation. He says the funding is also needed to update its faculty salary scale, which is now over 10 years old. Recent pay increases for Guam Department of Education personnel have put further pressure on the school. It now has more than 70 vacancies that Christ says can be attributed in part to current salary levels. Christ says the university is not planning to increase tuition this fiscal year, provided it receives the full appropriation of $42 million. He also points out that according to an economic impact study conducted by the university in 2020, for every $1 it receives in general operations funding from GovGuam, UOG generates $3 in additional tax revenue. Our conversation with UOG President Dr. Thomas Christ coming up. Half a day, everyone. Welcome to The Hub. I'm Nestor Lecanto, and we are joined this week by the president of the University of Guam, Dr. Thomas Christ, who's going to talk to us about the upcoming fiscal year or school year budget for the university. Dr. Christ, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Nestor. Happy day. Happy Monday.
Half a day. First, you kind of taken an unusual step to make a public appeal for the passage of your budget before the budget hearing. So obviously it's quite important to you. Can you talk about your budget requests and why it's so important that you get the full amount this year?
Mm-hmm. So I think as we try to point out in the budget submission itself that we really need to turn the corner this year. There's several reasons why, but one is that we are submitting our report, a big internal report for our reaccreditation at the end of June this year. And our Senior Vice President and Provost, Anita Borja Enriquez, is a commissioner of the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. So she's, at the very highest level there, very plugged in, and she regularly reviews other universities for their accreditation. And so she's just back from doing 4 of them. And so she really emphasizes how important the finances are to accreditation. And so we've had a historic run of 16 years, continuous accreditation, the longest we've ever had in our 70-year history. And that's at risk this year because we've had a serious decline in our funding certainly since 2018. Our high water mark was about 2015, 2016, and it's come down very dramatically since then. And that's compounded by the decline in value thanks to inflation. So it's a 23% dollar value drop in these 5 years. It's a 35% drop in inflation adjusted terms. That's a dramatic reduction in support for the university. So we've decided as an institution that we must get the public support and certainly the legislature's support to turn this ship around. We really have to get funded at the level that we used to be funded. And if you gave us today in value what we got in 1994, 30 years ago, it would be $63 million. So 42 million is really quite, in line with what we had been. So we ran 30 million a year from 94 until 2018, and then it started plummeting, and now we're down around 23 million. So that's what we're trying to do. So we understand that it's tricky because we have so much great news coming out of the university. People think, oh, things must just be hunky dory, and we certainly are doing an amazing amount with a dramatically reduced dropping appropriation, but that can't last, right? And so, we're losing people. We have 77 vacancies. It's a serious situation, and we really need the public support for the university to get back to where we were 5 years ago.
Yeah, just to add more context to the budgetary shortfall. Can you go over the past 5 years that was contained in the press release of how much each year the budget request has been the shortfall in the budget request from what was actually appropriated to?
Yeah, I don't actually have it sitting in front of me. I should have that. So it was about 30.7 and these are all just, nominal dollars and not adjusted for inflation. 30.7 million in 2018. So that was the budget that the year that I arrived. That was the one that was going. And then since then, it's been this steady reduction down to 23.6, I think now. If you look at it, there's a little bit of zigzag in there because of the COVID. So the reason we've been able to survive these cuts these years is because of the COVID rescue funds that we've gotten. And those run out this June, and that'll be the end of that. So we don't have that lifeline to help sustain us through this. And it's important for people to know that the general appropriation pays for salaries and utilities, the basic stuff of the university, not new buildings, not the federal research, none of that stuff. It's just the basic salaries and utilities and maintenance stuff. So that's gone down all of these years. And so the total amount that is different from what we should have gotten is just about 30 million in that 5-year period. So
yeah, quite a substantial amount. Dr. Kreis, we've got to take a short break, and we'll be back to talk a little bit more about the implications of the budget shortfall right after this break. Okay, we are back with Dr. Thomas Kreis, the president of the University of Guam, of course, and we're talking about the upcoming budget request from the Guam legislature. Dr. Kreis, you talked about, the critical need for a full budget appropriation or allocation for this particular upcoming school year. What are some of the implications if you don't get that money?
So one of the key things is that we have 77 current vacancies in our faculty and staff, and that's been growing over these years. And so a real impact on students is that there are a number of courses that we can't add sections to, or we don't have enough faculty to cover. And so what happens is students need a certain course in their program to finish on time, and they can't get that. So that means they wind up staying longer. And the longer you take to finish a degree, the less likely you are to finish it. So that's why we're always so interested in trying to get students on track, stay on track, sort of move through the system as promptly as possible. So we've made dramatic changes, improvements in the last 5, 6, 10 years at least, on our graduation rate. So they've gone up from 26% to 42%. That's a dramatic change in a fairly short time. But that still means that more than half of our students don't finish in a 6-year period. And so not having enough faculty means that that students then have a harder time getting through. And then 60% of our students are Pell eligible, which means they come from relatively modest, low-income families. And so it's even harder for people in kind of tough economic situation to take longer, because it's just, they already have so many other things going on with work, sometimes multiple jobs, certainly family obligations and so on. And so it's harder and harder to get through. So we've done everything we can to try to put more resources around our students to help support them through this. And so by having 77 vacancies, it makes it that much harder to get our students through. And we've been recognized by the U.S. News World Report College Guide for our efforts on social mobility. So we're doing a really good job of taking people from either from first in their families to go to college, or from low income situations, and to get them through college. So we're really noted for being able to do that. But it does take people, it does take faculty, it does take, we have to have the right number of courses so that students can get through. So I'd say that's probably the most obvious impact on students and on our community is it's harder to finish at University of Guam if we don't have enough faculty and advisors to keep people going.
Yeah, can you give us an idea of what sort of the faculty positions are vacant, and what fields and what the fields you think that are most important for students at the university?
So it covers the full range of disciplines, and we do depend a lot on really great cadre of adjunct professors from all aspects of professions in Guam. We have people working, course by course, teaching courses, and so that helps us a lot and helps us get through. But a difference with adjunct faculty versus full-time is that the full-time faculty are the ones who develop the curriculum, who update the curriculum, who provide a lot of the advising and support for various student activities and so on. So there's a big difference between a full-time residential faculty versus a part-time faculty. So but some of the fields that we perennially have full classes in are many of the sciences, mathematics, biology, chemistry. All of those are feeder courses, of course, to programs in the health sciences like nursing and social work and some of the others. Certainly, those courses also support engineering and other things. So you create these bottlenecks at different parts of the curriculum that wind up affecting really pretty much all of the fields.
Yeah. How would you respond to maybe someone in the legislature? I'm not saying this is what they would say, but you're saying that you need to hire, fill 77 positions, and that you need to update outdated faculty pay. So basically, you might say that you're going to hire more employees and going to adjust pay to increase salaries. How would you respond to that?
So we're losing faculty as it is. So we've quite a few number of faculty have left for much higher paying jobs. One is leaving this spring for double his UOG salary. So it's very hard to compete with that. So this budget doesn't solve the whole 77. It just begins to hire. We'll just begin hiring some of the 77 vacancies, because particularly faculty positions typically take a full academic year to hire because of the way the whole system works. You typically hire people at the beginning of an academic year. There's some exceptions to that, but so this is a sort of a down payment on that. And then on the adjustment to the faculty pay scale, this is also just a down payment. It's the first phase of a multi-phased effort to raise the salaries to basically to match GDOE, because we're running, as we gave an example, $13,000 below GDOE now if you start a job with them versus us with a terminal degree. So that makes it hard for us to hire faculty, to retain faculty. So that's been an issue for us for these number of years. And the pay scale is at least 10 years old. I mean, there's some ways of looking at that scale to say that it's 30 years old, but it's at least everyone agrees it's at least 10 years out of date. And so that's just not sustainable. What industry is running on 10-year-old salary scales? So
yeah, and as I'm sure you're aware, the legislature has before it the governor's request to raise the salaries of certain fields. I mean, they have already done so for nurses and law enforcement, and so now this is the general pay scale that is being proposed to be raised. So you're right in the middle of a bunch of raises that have been paid out and also are under consideration. So that's another thing for the legislature's consideration. We got to take another break. Sure, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But just to say that we've included the piece of that because our classified employees would be covered by that 22%. So our $42 million budget includes the amount of money we would need to meet that new requirement. So.
All right, got you. Thanks for the clarification. Okay, we'll take another quick break and we'll be back with further implications of this budget request, including the prospect of potential tuition hikes. I'll ask Dr. Kreis about that right after this. All right, Dr. Kreis, we are back to continue our discussion about the University of Guam's budget request. And we were talking about, whether or not the legislature would fund you completely as you're requesting. And I wanted to ask, what are the implications of not getting all the money that you need? How would you make up for that shortfall? And that brings up the specter of a tuition rate increase. What are your thoughts?
So it made it clear in a couple of other ways that if we can get the full appropriation of 42 million, there's zero chance of a tuition increase. And I emphasize that raising tuition is sort of the last thing that we're interested in doing. We're the second most affordable land-grant university in the whole country, and we like being down in that range, particularly with 61% of our students are Pell eligible. So that means it's a fairly low-income group that we're serving, and so it's really important to keep that as affordable as possible. So the appropriation is by far the biggest part of our budget, and tuition is the second biggest, and it's about maybe a third of what the appropriation is. And so one problem with raising tuition is that whenever any college raises tuition, their enrollment goes down. And so you don't ever get the revenue that you were hoping because the student numbers go down. So it's not a good thing, but it is the only alternative to the appropriation. And in public universities across the U.S., for some states have really, undermined their public universities. And there's some universities that are up at $20,000 a year for tuition. So they're basically just like private universities. They're running almost entirely on tuition without any support from their public, from their legislature. So it's not in anybody's, never our interest to raise tuition. It's just the only other alternative. Or I could say, there are two alternatives: raise tuition or shut things down, right? Those are the two options. And so we've never had a sense of why our budget has been cut so dramatically. So we haven't had any clue about what it is that the legislature might want to stop at the university. So we basically kept things going. We started the School of Engineering in 2016, and that was the high water mark for our total contributions from GovGuam, and it's been downhill ever since. And at School of Engineering is a great thing. We're graduating great engineers. I meet with a number of people employing our graduates. They're thrilled with them. It's great for us to have highly trained engineers from here, our own people, rather than flying in expensive off-island engineers. So it's a great thing for Guam. It's a great thing for our region. But it's also not cheap. And so we're building a building, we need equipment, we're trying to keep our faculty who are getting lured away by much, much higher salaries. And so, to launch something that expensive and then face 5 years of steady reductions in appropriations, just like, this is not sustainable. We can't keep this going. So anyway, that would be an example of the kind of challenges that we've had the way through. The rescue money, as I say, have helped us kind of stabilize through this, but those funds are ending in June.
Yeah, if I hear what you're saying, even if you were to forced to raise tuition, it's not going to really accomplish as much because you'll see a decrease in enrollment. So that will kind of make that, the revenue potentially a lot less than, you had anticipated.
Right. So it's never in our interest to do that, right?
Okay. Have you had a chance to meet with the oversight chair and discuss some of your concerns already?
So we've been all the way through. We've been in close connection with Senator Amanda Shelton, the chair of the Oversight Committee, and also with Senator Jesse Lujan, who's the vice chair under the 37th legislature. So those channels of communication are good. Yeah,
and so they're the ones that are kind of going to execute the budget discussion with their colleagues. Yeah, and are they generally agreeable to what your needs are, and do they understand the critical importance of getting all the money that you're asking for?
Yeah, they were quoted in today's Post in an article supporting the $42 million request. So we're very pleased with that, and we have a series of meetings now with, particularly with the new senators in the 37th, to orient them about the university, give them tours of facilities and that sort of thing, starting tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And so that'll be one of the other ways that we get to communicate. And we also have student government leaders and our Board of Regents and the Board of Directors of the Endowment Foundation are all helping to get the message out.
All right, we've got to take one more quick break, and then we'll come back to wrap it up right after this. Please stay with us. All right, Dr. Christ, we are back for a final couple of minutes. I wanted to ask you if you could maybe kind of wrap this up for us and for the public in particular. I think you're seeking public support ahead of the budget hearing. When is a budget hearing, by the way, and what would you say to the public to come out and perhaps, and the students, of course, too, and their parents to come out and support your budget request?
So we expect the budget hearing to be in about a month, I think, if it follows the pattern of the last couple of years. So we've got a little bit of time there for making the case. I think a really important thing to emphasize to the people of Guam is the value of the university to the whole community, whether you go there or not, or whether you send your kids there or not. It's very valuable as an institution. So we generate over $350 million in economic activity for Guam. For every dollar that the GovGuam gives to UOG, we generate $3 in additional tax revenue back to GovGuam. So education is the best investment you can make at every level, from pre-kindergarten through doctoral studies. It's the best general investment you can get, the best return on investment. And so all of our educational activities need public support, whether we individually are attending them or not. We all benefit from a more educated, a more highly trained population. Another thing to pay attention to, I think, is the loss of population. So in the last census, we lost 3.5% of our population between 2010 and 2020. And that's a serious loss of people. And if you can educate people and keep them here and provide people with the full range of college experiences and community college and trades opportunities here, they're less likely to leave. And you can also begin to bring back people who've left the island. So I think just from that point of view, it's really important that we invest in education at all levels. And the university, I think, has done a superb job over 70 years, and particularly in the past 10, 20 years, a dramatic increase in the amount of resources we're attracting to Guam. So over $20 million a year in highly prestigious federal research funds are coming to Guam because of the University of Guam. That's over 200 jobs that supports on federal research money alone. We've also attracted $50 million in resources, external resources to build buildings, to add to our capacity for nursing and for engineering. And so the university does a tremendous range of direct services, things like CEDARS for disability services and all kinds of environmental help that we provide. So it's a tremendous return on the investment. It isn't a sinkhole. It isn't something you just pour money into. It's something you invest in. And our students are worth the investment because we all benefit from a more highly trained, a more highly educated community. And so this is the place for that. And Guam has reason to be very proud of UOG and its people. And we're really just asking the public to support the legislature, support the GovGuam, support for the university.
All right. I think they heard your pitch, and I think that'll be a similar pitch before the Guam legislature when they have the budget discussions for the University of Guam. Best of luck with that, Dr. Christ, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. See you, it's possible.
All right. I'm Nestor Conte. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you again next week on The Hub.